Everyone, and welcome to the Transportation and Environment Committee. Today we're taking up the FY 21 to 26 CIP amendments under the transportation category, as well as the facility planning review of the Fenton Street cycle track. In May of 2020, the Montgomery County Council unanimously approved the county's FY 21 to 26 capital improvement program. We recognize that since the approval of the CIP late last spring, there have been even more short and long-term challenges and constraints created as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and its result on the economy. We've also passed a growth policy that's had a significant impact on our revenues. On January 15th, 2021, County Executive Mark Elridge sent over his proposed amendments to the CIP, taking into consideration budget constraints that may have emerged since last May. Eager to take up these two items. Welcome Dr. Orlin as usual, and welcome Director Conklin. Do any of my colleagues need to add anything?
Well, I appreciate the lead in and the reality check, and I'll save my comments as we go point by point for each important item.
Okay, and welcome for Councilmember Friedson. Always nice to have you at T&E as well. Councilmember Reamer, anything to add?
Let's just get into it.
Okay. With that being said, let me turn it over to Dr. Orlin.
Hey, good morning, everybody. A little bit of an overview first. The executive's recommended CIP is about 5% less in terms of funding than the approved CIP from last May, down from about 4.35 billion to 4.18 billion. Now in July, there was a savings plan, and part of that savings plan included some reductions to the CIP. And then, as you pointed out, Mr. Hucker, the executive's recommending new amendments now on January 15th. He did, and that results in further reductions. When you look across the agencies, you see the chart at the top of page 2, table 1. It's an apples to apples comparison about what is the funding shown in FY 21 through 26 compared to last May, and it shows that transportation is down 3%. It shows schools is down 6.8% and has other reductions as well in other agencies. But I do want to point out that that's a bit deceiving, because what's happened is that in transportation, some of the $992 billion, which is what the executive is recommending now for the 6 years, is actually money that was delayed from FY 20 into FY 21. So it doesn't represent new more spending. It just represents delayed spending from the prior CIP. And in the other direction, the schools CIP, although it shows a reduction of 6.8%, there was actually $54 million of that money that was actually spent in FY 20. And so the real reduction is about 3.4% in schools. But nevertheless, it's a reduction across the entire CIP. I think all the agencies received reductions. In terms of the categories within transportation, table 2 at the bottom of page 2, you see that there were reductions in the pedestrian bikeways category and the roads category primarily, but those are due almost entirely to two projects that the executive is recommending. One is to defer the Capitol Crescent Trail tunnel in Bethesda, and on the road side to defer by 3 years Observation Drive in Clarksburg and Germantown. And we'll talk about those in a bit. There's also shows an increase in the mass transit category, but that's illusory too, because it's mainly it's going up because there was a $29 million delay in the funds for the Bethesda Metro Station South Entrance that was to be spent in FY 20 and is moved into 21, so it artificially inflates that number. Bottom line is the essentially across the all the areas within the transportation CIP. The two that are down are ped bikes because of Capitol Crescent Trail and roads because of Observation Drive. Okay, going into the individual projects on page 3. First, I have what I call consent projects. There are 11 of them, and I'll just name them for those who don't have the packet in front of them. These are projects which the executive is recommending amendments for, but they're not substantive in terms of scope or cost or timing. Nothing's changed in any of those. The changes all have to do with things like changing funding sources or maybe moving some money around a little bit within the project, but not changing the completion date of the project. And so those projects are, just to put them on the record, advanced reforestation, Bethesda Bikeway and pedestrian facilities, Bradley Boulevard improvements, bridge renovation, Century Boulevard, pedestrian safety program, traffic signal system modernization, sidewalk and curb replacement, permanent patching residential rural roads, resurfacing primary arterial, and resurfacing residential rural roads. All those project description forms as proposed by the executive are in the packet. And again, I recommend approval of all of those amendments because they're not substantive. I call them consent calendar ones because unless a council member wants to talk about one of them, I would ask that you recommend approval for all those 11.
Colleagues, any comments? Okay, Director Conklin, welcome. And I don't know if you want to introduce your team at some point. Welcome everybody for joining us.
Good morning. Sure, we're happy to be here today, although we'd rather be proposing an expansion in the investment in the transportation system in the county instead of a cut to it. But nonetheless, I do think there is some good news in here. We've got some items proposed to advance important initiatives that have the opportunity to expand access to our important life science hub, to invest in the flash system a little further to make that more reliable. Those are going to be important projects that benefit large numbers of people, and we're happy to see those here today. Disappointed, obviously, to see some project delays in some of these projects, and I wanted to mention that I did send a memo to each of you, I believe it was yesterday, kind of outlining the steps that have taken on what are likely to be the most controversial recommendations in here around the White Flint Station and the CCT tunnel. Look for that conversation. We have a large number of our team with us today. I believe all of our division chiefs are here to talk about any items that come up in each of those areas, and Joanna is here as well for the BRT program. And Brady Goldsmith is with us today, kind of serving dual duty. He is moving from the Office of Management and Budget to DOT to be the Director of Management Services in DOT. So he is walking a fine line here today and representing the department and representing.
Congratulations, Brady.
So we're very happy to have him on. So with that, we'll let Glenn proceed with the packets.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The first project we'll talk about is the Great Seneca Science Corridor transit improvements. This is an addition to the CIP. It's $1.5 million to basically do detailed planning of essentially an interim service for the Corridor Cities Transitway. That would serve the Great Seneca Science Corridor area. I think the DOT has maybe briefed each of you privately on this over the last several weeks. It's not been that long. There are maps showing the set of bus routes and stations on circles 25 through 35. Recommend approval of this. There's one sort of wrinkle in this, however. It has to do with the funding. It's $1.5 million, but what the executive is recommending is that only $500,000 of it be appropriated, because the idea was that this should be shared equally amongst the impact tax collected by the county, but also by the county within Rockville and the county within Gaithersburg. This has been an issue that's been lingering now for over 6 years. And I need to just give a little background on this. When the county transportation impact tax went countywide in the early 2000s, cities asked for some special treatment that the rest of the county basically wasn't getting, because recognizing that they were municipalities and these were improvements within their jurisdictions. So the agreement was that the county, the money that's collected in transportation impact taxes in Rockville and also in Gaithersburg could only be spent on projects that are impact tax types projects in Rockville and Gaithersburg respectively, and they had to be included in an MOU between the county and each of the cities. The MOUs were completed in 2006, and we've been operating under that MOU for the last 15 years. Most of the projects, those MOUs have been finished, and so DOT has been trying for the last 6 years to get the MOU updated to include other newer county projects in each of those jurisdictions that are eligible for impact taxes, and also allow city projects that add capacity, to be included. However, I'll just say it's been unsuccessful, not reached this point. And so, for example, a few years ago, there was money programmed in the CIP for the Maryland 355 BRT planning. I think it was $1 million, and it was supposed to be split between impact taxes collected in Rockville and Gatesburg for their portion of that line. That has never been included in the MOU. The MOUs have not been redone, so the counties basically had to eat that. And this is a lingering problem. So I'm hoping that finally this year it can be resolved, but it's not looking very promising, I'll just have to say. But nevertheless, so I'm recommending agreement with the executive for now, approve the $500,000 appropriation, the full 1.5 million for the funding of the project, but try to work with the cities to get this MOU changed to update it to include a new county and city projects in each of those jurisdictions.
When I got my briefing from DOT about the project, I think it was prior to they were going to have a meeting with each of the cities right after that. Chris, can you comment at all on their reaction to the project, and
Yeah.
you have anything to add to Glenn's characterization of our relationship on this?
Sure. There's two issues here. There's the project itself, and then there's the impact tax MOU.
Right.
We've met on both of those items. I think the response on the project itself has been positive from each city. It makes some of the connections that have been important between their CBDs or other parts of their city and this area that cities, county of the Great Seneca Science Corridor is. They have raised some issues with the ideas of lane repurposing on some roads, but have been supportive in other places where it's been recommended within this plan. So all in all, it's been a favorable response to the project. Obviously, issues to work through with the next phase of our planning and analysis here. On the impact tax MOU, it hasn't been focused on this in particular, but that has been a very slow, frustrating engagement. As Glenn mentioned, it's been going on for a long time. We reinvigorated it in 2019 to try to reach a solution, partly because some of the funds that are in these accounts are getting to be quite old, in the neighborhood of 10 years since they've been collected. And we would like to get them put to good work, but we just seem to not be on the same page and struggle to get on the same page with the cities about the use of these. They have a desire, either because of the way they do their capital program, to accumulate funds to pay for projects because they don't debt finance things, or alternatively, they have projects that, the pieces aren't in place for them to implement, but they're trying to save up these dollars to do those projects when those pieces are in place. And those elements have led to us being at loggerheads and getting this resolved. In January of this year, we met in December with the mayors and city leaders. In January of this year, we sent them a proposed revised MOU that's the same for each city, and a short white paper describing why it's important to get this unfrozen. And we hope to circle back with them within this month or early March, once they've had a chance to look at that and do their own analysis. But as Glenn said, our previous discussions in December of this year didn't point to a resolution of this through this process. So it may require a different strategy, perhaps some council action in the future if we can't come to a resolution through agreement with the cities. But the project was well received. Those are really two separate things.
Right. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Councilmember Reamer.
Well, I'm really enthusiastic about this strategy for transit. I think it is very well considered. It shows a practical approach to bus rapid transit or bus transit, and I think it's probably one of the more important projects I've seen the council consider, in a really long time. And I think it can be part of making possible what we are also separately undertaking, which is a review of the land use and the development that's allowed there. My colleagues will recall the council, after a lot of discussion, directed the planning board to revisit the staging triggers for that part of the county so that we could allow more development there, hopefully biotech and other life sciences. And transportation was an issue, and we have been stuck in the past on these major staging provisions with the CCT. And I think it seemed smart at the time, but it hasn't worked. And we're still pressing forward to get the CCT. At the same time, there are other ways to meet the transportation needs in that area and with transit. And so I'm a big fan of this. I think it's very, very strong. Is precisely what I was envisioning in advocating for the revision of the staging triggers. And I'm pleased to see it happen. It sounds like we have, I don't want to call it a bureaucratic problem with the funding issue, but it may be one where we just have to agree to disagree. I don't know, if there is, you've been trying. It seems like you've been making a really good faith effort to resolve that. And, we'll have to keep working on that. At the same time, I think it's worth observing that without doubt, Gaithersburg and Rockville will benefit substantially from this proposal. So it's not as though this isn't in their interest. I think they recognize that. It's just that there is this parallel issue that is a long-running issue, and that I don't think we should let that get in the way. If we had other options to fund this with, then I would be in favor of those other options, but I think it's pretty painfully clear from this packet that we don't have other options to fund this from. So if we want this to happen, let's get behind it and let's keep working with the municipalities in a good faith way. And it's not like we're trying to spend this money, inside the Beltway. So, all right, thanks.
Councilmember Glass.
So I was encouraged when I received a private briefing on the proposal, and I'm really glad to hear that the municipalities are on board as well. That's really good news. And I echo the sentiments that Councilmember Reamer just shared. And I think, another kind of starting point in this entire conversation, while we're going to be forced to make some decisions that are unpleasant on various projects, I think that, at least for me, I'm going to continue holding out hope that President Biden and Congress will be able to come up with some infrastructure package that might help bolster these efforts, and things that we're delaying or getting setting in motion will be able to come to fruition at some point in time, so that hopefully later down the road we'll be able to have a conversation of prioritizing these projects for real federal funding. So tough conversation that we will have for the next hour or so, but I'm holding out hope.
Okay, so are we going along with staff recommendation on this one? Great. Okay, without objection. Dr. Orlin.
Yes, sir. Number 3 is the US 29 Managed Lane Project, which you reviewed a month ago. Again, just to recap, the executives recommending, as a result of the US 29 reliability and mobility study, to go forward with detailed planning for the managed lane option, which was the bus HOV lane combination. The committee felt, however, that the median bus lane option was not given enough due attention. And so you asked DOT to come back with what would be the cost to extend the study, the US 29 mobility and reliability study, to essentially do that for the median lane option, and perhaps even improve the other one as well, so that at least there's an apples to apples comparison at the end. They responded that it costs $250,000 and would take 6 to 9 months to complete. They're also recommending continuing to show the $6 million in the CIP for whatever option the council ends up selecting as a result of this $250,000 extended study. I'm recommending that the PDF be changed in 5 ways. They're all shown in circle 40 is what it comes down to. And these are the 5 ways. First of all, to change the name of the project, since you haven't decided that it's going to be a managed lane project. Call it a more generic name, Bus Rapid Transit US 29 Phase 2. Bus Rapid Transit US 29 was the flash service. This would be the next phase of that, whatever that is. and you'll be deciding that at the end of the $250,000 extended study. Secondly, that the subcategory that this shows in, this is really more of a bureaucratic thing, it shows up as a road project in the executive's recommendation. It's really not a road project, it's a mass transit project. That's the main scope of it. There are some ancillary road improvements, ancillary bike and ped improvements as well, but they're all ancillary to the mass transit project, which is to update or upgrade the service from what we have now on Route 20 on from the Flash. Thirdly, to program the $250,000 in FY22. And however, because it's going to take 6 to 9 months to do that study, change the schedule for the $6 million, which the executive had shown as $3 million in FY22 and FY23, push that back 6 months so that it ends up being not $3 million in the first year, $3 million in the second year, but $1.5 million in the first year, $3 million in the second year, $1.5 million in the third year, FY22, 23, and 24, respectively. And if you do that, that whole study would, on whatever option you pick at the middle of next year, should be ready to be going to CIP if funds are available by the CIP update that year. Fourth, I would only recommend appropriating the $250,000 at this time, because until you've selected what the final option is, don't think it's appropriate to appropriate the $6 million yet. And then finally, and this is a point I made last time, and OMB agrees with this, the executive had recommended funding the project with general obligation bonds. It can't be. It has to be funded with some form of current revenue because it's planning. It doesn't create an asset in and of itself, and that lasts as long as the bonds are being paid off. And all of our projects in planning for the last 30, 40 years have been paid for with some form of current revenue, including all the BRT projects. So the OMB is suggesting funding it with transportation impact tax funds, which is a form of current revenue, and that would be sufficient. So those 5 changes reflected on Circle 40, and I'm recommending you approve that.
Chris, why was it ever considered a road project?
Why was this considered a road project? The
Yeah.
purpose of the project when it was started under the previous council was to identify ways to improve the performance of the corridor for all the users of the corridor. BRT benefiting from whatever other improvements were identified. Issues with concern about segmentation from the phase 1 project that was under a federal categorical exclusion. That is no longer an issue. That project's done.
Okay.
Those were some of the reasons. And just a couple other updates on this. We have engaged with our colleagues in the planning department on Councilmember Glass's suggestion to look at temporary repurposing of a lane in the Four Corner area. And highlights from the memo we sent, we do plan to re-engage with the Corridor Advisory Committee on this next phase of work. That's part of the reason for the duration, so that those folks have time to understand what was done and to absorb the new information as it comes. And the last thing that I'd like to mention is we're having a lot of discussion in DOT, and I've also taught this with the chair of the planning board. Are there things that we can do that aren't construction intensive to get more priority to the bus operations in the short term while we work on the long-term option here? So that's part of the reason that we're really recommending that we keep the dollars in here so that we don't have to go scrounge them or find them elsewhere later when we have those short-term options available. There are several elements of this that are common to both alternatives. And as we get into this revisiting of the analysis, we'd like to identify what are those common features and see if we can start to advance the design and approval work for them in features sooner. So that I just wanted to add those things before you consider this item.
No, I appreciate it. I didn't mean to cut you off. Okay. Colleagues, any questions?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Director Conklin, thank you for acknowledging the memo that I sent after last month's conversation about the direction of BRT and those thoughts. So I'm glad you've received it and are giving it a fair review. Question I have about the reliability and mobility study. So $250,000 for additional work, but I know that Last time this came up a number of years ago before I arrived in the council, I think a similar study was funded, maybe the first study, well, clearly not the first study, but another study to the tune of around $425,000 for this work. Has that all been expended? And I'm curious what that reported out and why we need to continue spending more money to study this.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, the project was advanced and in the capital program independently. So there wasn't really a mixing of the funds for this study with the Flash project that's been implemented. The 400, I don't remember the exact amount, but 400, I'll use your number, 425,000, that was the previous study, was the results we reviewed with you a month or so ago. The elements of that were to look at all of the previous work since the 90s that the state had done and to compile that work into a single document so that the ready resource of all those previous studies, it was to study the dedicated bus lane alternative that had been proposed at the council session when the Flash project was approved. So that was done, and that's actually why some of the shortcomings that you've all noted are in there, is because of the way that got underway to study exactly what was proposed and not necessarily to how to make that work as well as it could. So that's part of the reason for the next phase of work. And then lastly was to build upon work that came out of the state's corridor studies that led to the Flash project that had shown a lot of promise from a bus carpool lane, but issues in terms of traffic congestion leaving downtown Silver Spring and a couple other locations in the corridor that the state never ran to the ground. And all of those activities were completed and documented and shared with you. I think that was that was released.
It was January 27th, yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
Excellent. Just to clarify, the $250,000, that is not a direct result after our conversation last month, right? That's just ongoing work.
No, it is.
Oh, okay.
No, that is directly to respond to the questions that the council raised and the issues that you wanted to see addressed about getting a fairer comparison of these alternatives before committing to one or the other, and improving the community outreach so that the neighbors had a better chance to be in that.
Got it. Okay.
There were some significant modeling questions that are hard to address, and that's part of the reason for the magnitude of the study.
No, okay. I appreciate that explanation, and I support the staff recommendation.
Great. Councilmember Reamer is giving a thumbs up.
Yeah, I was just going to say I concur with staff's recommendation. I thought we had a terrific session on this recently and established a stronger direction, and I'm glad to see us, follow through on that. So thanks.
Great.
Okay. Okay. The next project, actually set of projects, excuse me, are those related to the Purple Line, and there are 4 of them. The Purple Line project itself, where we're basically reimbursing the state for up to $40 million towards the cost of that line, plus some earlier money we'd spent to clear the right-of-way. The Capitol Crescent Trail project, the Bethesda Metro South Entrance, and the Silver Spring Green Trail. Last July, as part of the savings plan, there was a substantial amendment to the Bethesda Metro South Entrance and Silver Spring Green Trail and Capitol Crescent Trail projects, reflecting a renegotiation that occurred between DOT and MTA as to the pace of those projects were actually following. They were obviously on slower pace than had been originally assumed. But that negotiation was based on the experience up through about late winter, early spring last year. So it was pre-COVID, and more importantly, before Purple Line Transit constructors walked off the job. And so we've lost a lot more time since then. The MTA staff has told me that they are hoping to pick a concessionaire this June, a new one for the construction part of the partnership, and that there would be approval by the Board of Public Works in September. So that's a full year, if not more, that there's going to be will have been a delay. And so those expenditure schedules for those 3 projects, particularly Bethesda South Entrance and Capitol Crescent Trail, are way off. There should be money that's moved considerably out of FY21, maybe all of it, or nearly all of it, into later years. The Purple Line project wasn't changed last summer. However, the executive is recognizing, of course, that there's been delays in that as well, the Purple Line itself. And so he's recommending moving nearly all the money that had been programmed for FY21, $20 million, into FY22 and 23, $10 million in each of those 2 years. I've talked with the state about this, the state staff. They recognize this is in conversations that yes, indeed, the Capitol Crescent Trail, Bethesda South Entrance, and the Purple Line have all been delayed, so Green Trail as well. However, they feel that the county does owe the state some money in FY21, and so there's still some more negotiating here to happen. But I think what we really need to have is for DOT to work with MTA to try in the next couple of weeks to come up with a new set of expenditure schedules for all 4 projects that the committee and the council could approve, which are more reflective of the schedule of these projects, and would result in delaying substantial funds out of FY21 into the later years. It doesn't reduce the total amount of money. It doesn't even reduce the appropriation, but it does reduce where the change where the money is hitting in the CIP. That's one issue. The other issue is the Capitol Crescent Trail Tunnel, which is purely a county project. There's we're paying for that, and the county would be building it. And the council, of course, last year approved the tunnel starting in FY25 and finishing in mid FY27. The executive is recommending delaying that by at least 2 years, if not more, put basically all the money going beyond 6 years. And for fiscal reasons. And the other reason is because they believe that it's possible to single track the light rail through the existing Bethesda tunnel, thus leaving room for the trail to go there instead of having to create a whole new tunnel. And part of the rationale for that is that while the Purple Line is ultimately planned to be running at 6-minute headways in the peak, Governor Hogan, when he allowed the project to go forward several years ago, one of the cutbacks he said was, well, for the first several years, and several could be 10, 20, we don't know, it won't run more often than every 8 minutes, so we could reduce the amount of money that was spent on buying rail cars, fewer rail cars, if you have a longer headway. If it's running at 8 minutes, the theory is that you could run a single track through that tunnel and make it work. DOT has asked MTA to study that, and in Mr. Conklin's letter that he referred to from a couple days ago, Chris's letter, he said it should be an answer sometime this year. I talked with Matt Pollock on Monday as well and asked him where that was and that study is in the process. He says it's largely done. They think they can get a response back to us in the next few weeks. So hopefully that will be resolved one way or another. We'll know whether or not what the executive is suggesting is, sorry about that, is possible or not. Mr. Conklin, maybe you want to talk a little bit more about this, or and Mr. Friedson also has written a letter in support of not delaying the project. I should just say I'm not either. I think the council should keep it on schedule, at least for the time being. We'll see where we are at the end of the CIP period, and we may have to end up adjusting the schedule again due to reconciliation. But at least from a starting point, don't start with a delay. Start with keeping it where it is in the time frame. And if we find out in the next few weeks that it is feasible to run through the tunnel, then the council can reconsider this. But at least as of right now, I would say keep it where it is. And Mr. Friedson, Mr. Conklin, I think you both might want to speak on this.
Yeah, I'm aware. Thank you, Dr. Orland.
Sure.
Mr. Conklin.
Yeah, thank you for that, Glenn. I think you did a good job summarizing the technicalities of the headway change and 1-track or 2-track. And we're not pretending to be expert in that. We've asked, as Glenn mentioned, MTA to look into this issue, whether that could happen. A couple other points in my letter just to raise. One, there is a pedestrian pathway in that tunnel that is not what we'd like to see to begin with. So this would allow improvement of that connection as well through the existing train tunnel. And I'm surprised to hear a couple weeks. I talked with Secretary Slater this week about this item, and he was suggesting this summer. I think that was probably because he was looking to have his new design build contractor weigh in on it once they're selected. And I said end of year to give them more space, because often the timeframes for these responses aren't exactly what we expect them to be or what they're said to be the first time. So that's why I said by the end of the calendar year, just to be realistic on when we would have a more thorough answer. The other thing that was interesting was when we talked with Secretary Slater, he mentioned the concept if the single track option doesn't work, whether the Capitol Crescent Trail tunnel through the Apex building might be added to the Purple Line contract, since they are re-procuring the design build efforts anyway. We don't know what that would mean to the county. It might mean exactly the same cost. It should in theory be cheaper, because you've got a contractor who's mobilized, whose general conditions and all of those things are already in place. So it should result in some significant, 15, 20-ish% cost savings by appending this to a larger project than being standalone. And obviously the coordination would be better, or this could be appended to the end of when Purple Line work is, the main Purple Line work is happening. So that was an interesting suggestion that came from the state. So we're looking forward to hearing back from those. Also, you've probably all seen that the surface trail is well underway, went under construction in a rapid fashion this winter. We actually had delayed it over the summer to not have as big an impact to the streetery. And we're hoping to be out there quickly, so that, again, as activity resumes in the streets of Bethesda in a more significant way than it has in the cold months here, we're out of the way. But that trail connection will be complete within this calendar year for sure, and will provide the connection to the Elm Street Park well in advance of the rest of this available. So we do have an attractive and safe biking route that will be available here. And really the question that's before us and is reflected in the executive's recommendation is the opportunity cost associated with committing such a large amount to a project that's relatively short and is bettering what will already be a good bike connection through Bethesda. This amount is roughly equal to what we could build 60 to 70 miles of sidewalk or path for, and would be enough to actually address all of the medium and high priority BIPA projects in Glenmont, Wheaton, Beers Mill, and Silver Springs. So, I'm not saying this tunnel is not useful. I'm just saying, is it right to commit so much resource to this at this time? And that's essentially everything that I corresponded with you on this project with, and happy to answer any other questions you have.
And to Dr. Orland's question of, is it feasible? I was on a call with you, Chris, and with the secretary, and yeah, he was clear. He thought it was feasible and worth continued study, and that there might be significant cost savings from working with that same contractor. And I know Dr. Orland's worried about whatever Hogan said about the headway for the next few years, but he won't be governor for more than a couple more years, and there'll be a different governor determining the headways. So I'm less concerned about that personally. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you, colleagues. First of all, on the working out the timeline of the payment, I have every faith that Director Conklin, you and MTA will be able to work that out. The money has to be available when it's needed so that we can move the Purple Line forward. I know we all support that. I won't focus any time on that, but I wanted to just note that. But with respect to Capitol Crescent Trail Tunnel, this is a really important project. If you remember last year, this was not Bethesda and Chevy Chase residents coming to testify on. This was one of the most remarked on project of any of the projects through the public hearing process from residents throughout the county. This is regional transportation infrastructure. We talked earlier about US 29 and the work that's happening there, and changing the way that we think about buses, recognizing that buses are transit, which is a commitment that we've made, and trails are transportation infrastructure. We've got to get out of this idea that this is a nice to have recreational opportunity. This is part of the regional transportation infrastructure going east-west in some of the most populous job centers and residential areas in the county. And the council did tremendous work last year, working extremely hard, starting with this committee, to unanimously reject the county executive's proposal to not fund this. And make no mistake, this is not a delay. This goes out of the CIP. This is eliminating this project forever. That's what this is. That's what the proposal before this committee and ultimately the council is going to be. I appreciate all the work that Director Conklin, you and your team have done with MDOT, but nothing is concrete in anything that we've heard here. It is ideas that could work out. I hope they do. Listen, if the new contractor can come in and help build this tunnel and it saves some money, the 15 to 20% cost savings potentially, great, let's do it. But it doesn't mean we should walk away from the funding commitment now. That will free up funding for other commitments that were made. In terms of the headways and in terms of the idea of addressing it that way, I would just point out Montgomery County supported the purple line, not the lavender line, as was noted that the governor had pushed forward with a significant number of cuts. For the county that has long supported the purple line to buy into the service cuts to the purple line and accept those as the county's formal position would be a devastating blow to decades of advocacy and political support for one of the most important transportation projects in a generation. And I just think that that would be a massive, massive mistake. I will also point out that this was a commitment that was made. This took away infrastructure from county residents. And this is about returning the infrastructure that was taken away from county residents, a commitment that was made through the Purple Line Station Minor Master Plan and the temporary loss of the Capitol Crescent Trail in order to build the Purple Line. Not following through with the commitment that's been made on this project would seriously undermine the county's credibility on the commitments that we make to community members. And moving forward with the single tracking idea, if it is feasible, which is highly questionable at this point, would make the Purple Line one of the most important transportation infrastructure projects the county has ever supported, less functional, and it will fall well short of our shared commitment to reliable, high quality public transit. So I very much respect and appreciate the Department of Transportation and all the work that has gone into this. But I really hope this committee will keep this project on schedule, that we can keep the commitment that's been made to the community, and we can continue to support a Purple Line exactly as it was committed to residents, and a trail return better, which is what was committed to residents. And so we can move forward as a county, as a community, with this critical transportation infrastructure for the region.
You're here.
Here. Okay, Councilmember Raymond.
First of all, that's very well said. Thank you, Councilmember Friedson. Very strong points. Very grounded in a lot of important county history here. And I really agree. I think this project has only ever happened because the county, a majority of county council members, not even the entire county, not even the entire county government, a majority of county council members has hung tough and fought for what we've needed year after year, decision after decision. And there have been multiple attempts to undermine the Purple Line and derail it. And we have managed to get it back on track time and time again. And I think this is yet another effort to undermine the Purple Line. It's not a surprise from the county executive. He spent his career undermining the Purple Line. This is just the latest. But I think it is absolutely wrong. We should never accept single tracking on this line. And the tunnel is, I would bet, one of the most highly used pedestrian bike intersection, improvements. It will be one of the most highly used in the whole country. I mean, just the sheer volume of people who will use this is really, really significant. And the surface crossing is also helpful. Frankly, we need them both because of the volume of demand. And, you know, our whole vision for downtown Bethesda is based in a future where we're not growing automobile traffic, we're growing transit use, biking, and walking. And we've got to plan for that future. This is a 100-year decision, you know, or longer. And the amount of money that we spend on this will determine, I think, the success, given the use. I don't think it is undue. And it is a regional transportation infrastructure. It's part of a bigger vision for the whole Washington region. I mean, I think one of the issues here is at every crossing, there is a seeming rationale for why it is not worth, you know, a large expenditure at that crossing. We face that at Little Falls. We face that at Georgia Avenue. I mean, you find it at every point, and you can see a logic for, well, this location, you know, it doesn't seem like it's worth the money. But then when you add up the whole infrastructure together to have a entire bicycle beltway or path that is functional, that doesn't require multiple crossings at grade, in traffic, at risk, it is transformational. But you have to keep the whole vision together to have that transformational outcome. So, you know, I think we have to be committed to building infrastructure of the future. And this is an essential component. I wish it weren't so expensive, but that's just the reality. And, you know, the Purple Line, you know, when I ran for office, I said I would build the Purple Line or die trying. I didn't expect to have to constantly fight to stay out of the grave, but here we are. So thank you. Appreciate the staff recommendation, strongly support it.
Councilmember Glass.
Thank you. Well, to Councilmember Raymer, you ain't dead yet, and I'm glad you're not, right? So let's keep fighting, and we're all going to keep fighting. But, you know, so this project in particular, I think, as has been wonderfully said, the sum is greater than its parts, right? It's not just a transportation project. It is placemaking and will help shape the future of Greater Bethesda and the entire DC region. And for all of the reasons that have been said, I strongly support it. We'll continue supporting it and support the staff recommendation.
Director Conklin, I think we might be mixing up two issues here. Can you talk about how this affects the Purple Line? My understanding is the single track proposal, which would be a change in the engineering and the plan, and I'm happy for MTA to study anything they want to study, is separate from this, right? You can have double tracking and have a surface trail continue, correct? You talk about those two issues, whether we're mixing them up.
No, absolutely. We will have a surface trail. That's done. I mean, the construction is.
We have one now.
And that trail will continue up 47th Street and will link back in to the Crescent Trail. And it will be a very attractive bicycling route. The bicyclists will come off the existing Crescent Trail. We are narrowing Bethesda Avenue so that they will not be on the sidewalk in that location, Bethesda and Woodmont. They'll cross directly across Woodmont Avenue diagonally with a bike signal. And the trail, when it opens, will go up Bethesda Avenue, cut across the plaza, have a conflict-free crossing of Wisconsin Avenue, and we'll go down, I think it's Willow, I might have the street wrong, but the street on the east side of Wisconsin into the Elm Street Park. And then there's another set of construction to tie it into the Capitol Crescent Trail when that trail is ready to be opened. The question is there a below-grade connection?
Mm-hmm.
And there was one option, obviously the option that was developed in the minor master plan that Councilmember Friedson spoke of, that goes through an envelope that was constructed in the Carr building, which is there and is dedicated to public use. The question is, does that continue in a new tunnel that's almost in, I think it's entirely within public right of way. So it's not like it will be lost to development nature. And then connect to the Capitol Crescent Trail. That's the one plan. So if you don't advance that plan, you will have a surface trail continuous and connected. It will have one more crossing of a street than it does with the tunnel. The other option that was suggested was changing the purple line configuration to improve the pedestrian and bike connection through the existing tunnel. And yes, we don't know the answer of what the impact of the operation of the purple line is, but it's possible that that would impact the operation of the purple line. Given the terminal station and the headways, it's probably not a significant impact, but if the headways increase, it would become more an issue of time. Making the decision to do that today doesn't change the ability to build this other tunnel alignment through the Apex building if it's found to be needed at that time, but you will always have a surface connection.
Yes. And yeah, I mean, appreciate the thoughts of my colleagues. Let me share a few thoughts of my own. If I'm a recreational cyclist, which I am, and I take my family, which I have many times, down the Capitol Crescent Trail, which I did many times for community to work to Bethesda, when I was often the only cyclist out there, and with my family on the weekends when I was among hundreds of other people. Faced with a choice, I'm certainly going to, and I think many people would make the decision to stay at grade and have a conflict-free, safe crossing at Wisconsin Avenue in the sunshine, rather than ride down into a tunnel and then back out uphill out of a tunnel. Some people will make a different choice, but we should not pretend like there are sort of no trade-offs in life. And I think plenty of recreational cyclists will prefer that route. We have a Capitol Crescent Trail now. It's getting many, many expensive enhancements that I've been very supportive of for many, many years. And it's going to be great when the Georgetown branch portion is completed and it connects back to Silver Spring and the transit center. And like all of us, I think nobody here has been spent as much time in Purple Line meetings as I have, chairing the Purple Line caucus and sitting on the board of Purple Line now for years. I don't see this as a Purple Line issue. This is a CCT issue, and whether there's a additional very expensive tunnel connection or not. I've gone along with that, but I don't think we should have a debate where we're pretending like there are just no trade-offs in life. We have to make countywide decisions. There's a finite amount of transportation money and an insufficient amount, and I wish there were more. There was a finite amount of bike ped transit money, and it's insufficient, and I wish there were more. And we've set very ambitious Vision Zero goals and equity and social justice goals, and we've passed a very expensive bicycle master plan that we've all voted for that makes a commitment to areas all over the county. And I don't think it's fair to our residents or as honest as we ought to be to pretend like there's no trade-offs. I can go along with restoring the cuts today, but it troubles me. And I don't want to be in the position as this project goes from 20 million to 50 to 70 and beyond to 150 potentially million. I don't want to be in community meetings or chambers of commerce meetings or other meetings in Wheaton or Clarksburg or Glenmont or Burtonsville in the coming years and say that we couldn't fund their sidewalk or their stoplight or their pedestrian or their protected bikeway because the money was all spent on one single tunnel enhancement in one part of the county. That's why it troubles me. I think that's the more honest way to look at it. We can't talk about fiscal responsibility and living within our means everywhere else in the county and not talk about it on this narrow enhancement to the Capitol Crescent Trail on this project. Dr. Orland, you look like you're muted.
I was. I learned my lesson about muting when I'm not talking. As you know. Is the vote 3-0 or 2-1?
I think it's 3-0.
Okay, just checking. Okay. All right. The next project is the White Flint Metro Station Northern Entrance. Last year, the council added funds equal to 1/3 of the cost of the estimate of that cost of that entrance, which is on the southeast corner of Old Georgetown Road and Rockville Pike in White Flint. There really hasn't been any progress over the course of the last year in terms of identifying sources of revenue to match provide the other 2/3, either from the state or from WMATA. As you know, the executive has a MOU with WMATA where they're going to try to have I think a biotech development at the site, but we're still far away from that yet. So the exec's recommending delaying the schedule by 1 year from what the council had approved, still funding 1/3 of the cost. And that seemed prudent given the fact that it's now not likely that design could start until at least FY23. It had been assumed that it was going to start in FY22. So I'm recommending concurring with the executive. And Mr. Conklin, I think, had some comments in his letter on this too.
Mr. Conklin.
Yeah, thank you. I know occasionally I disagree with Dr. Orwell, and this is one case. I think there has been progress on this item. We had a meeting with a joint development group at WMATA just yesterday, and I know they've briefed the Fed committee as well on this. They are advancing concepts for the site. Some are as much as 5 million square feet of development. Many of them have a different idea about how to reconfigure the station. And we have also had cabinet level discussions with both Secretary Schultz and Slater, and the county executive has met with the governor on advancing this idea of a life sciences center of excellence in White Flint. And there's great interest in the state in advancing that as a major economic development initiative. So while there hasn't been specific conversation about how to partner on the design of what was in the feasibility study, there has been a lot of conversation about building support for the development here that would really make use of this station and also create the capacity within that development framework to construct this station. And as I mentioned last year, and this is a little bit of Groundhog Day, even though we're at the end of February, as I mentioned last year, the primary beneficiary of this new entrance is the WMATA parcel, where this large development is now under a joint development agreement between the county and WMATA, and they're looking to select their advisory and development teams in the very near future. So this has progressed, although not in the technical details of this. So thank you.
Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. I guess I'm a little unclear. Why doesn't the executive want to have money in the capital budget for this project if the county executive is working on a public-private partnership to develop the site?
I think that's a fair question, Councilmember Reamer. And I think the notion is, which money is it? It could be that there's a self-financing mechanism within the development. It could be that there's state economic development grant or transportation money to support this. It could be that there's a TIF district or something like that for development of the site to fund some of these things. So it's the question of committing bond capacity to this now, when the trajectory of the development is unclear and it's not clear that what is scheduled for design is what we would want to design.
Okay, well, I guess my thinking here is the county executive has made a lot of noise about how he's going to develop this project, and it almost seems like it's his singular offer on economic development, a lot of times. That project must include a new entrance for the metro that works for the whole White Flint district. Strengthening Metro's usability there is absolutely essential to the success of White Flint, probably more important than any one particular site that gets developed, because it serves all the sites. And having a site go up, a building go up there without an enhancement to the metro would really be a setback for White Flint, not an improvement. And so if the executive wants us to defer funding for this site and its enhancement so that he can wrap it all up into a bigger deal, I'm okay with that reluctantly, but that bigger deal has to include the metro enhancement, and it needs to be delivered on a rapid timeline. So, if is that what the posture of the executive is that the executive wants to deliver a metro site enhancement in addition or as part of this project that he has dreamed up.
Well, I can't speak exclusively what the executive is thinking, but we have been consistent in repeating what we talked about last year. The redevelopment of this WMATA parcel is a prime motivator for improvement to that station. And frankly, the connection to the rail is important, but the improvements to the transfer facilities and the bus facility at this location, I think, is just as important. And the notion of the configurations of the WMATA property are important. Some of them propose overbuild of the entire station, some of the concepts you saw a couple of weeks ago, which would require a different type of investment in this altogether. So I think there's just still a little bit of uncertainty around that, but I think the idea that the station development occurs in concert with the development of the WMATA properties makes a great deal of sense.
If I could add, I mean, the real question here isn't whether or not there should be a northern entrance, and in fact, the exec's still supporting keeping the 1/3 placeholder in there. The question is it likely there's going to be some kind of funding plan that would fund the entire thing by this summer? And that does not seem likely. More likely the following summer, which is what the exec is really saying.
Well, not just a question of timing, but Chris, do I understand your position to be, while the county executive is spending a lot of time on this, he's clearly indicated the county's interested in redeveloping this property, but while there's a lot of moving parts and while there's a new administration, we would want to do so in a way that maximizes the contribution from our private partners, from WMATA, from the state, from the feds, as much as possible. All signaling that the county is clearly going to make our contribution as well, but there's too many moving parts to pick a dollar amount for this year. Is that accurate?
I think that's a good statement of the position here, yes.
Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, thanks. I'm okay with it, just like Councilmember Reamer is. We fought very hard last year to add this in, had a robust discussion about it. I just will point out a couple things. One, this is not just important to the WMATA property. I mean, I think that is, a very poor view of the importance of transit infrastructure to broader development, walkability, and placemaking. And I don't believe you meant that. I just wanted to clarify that because I think you share our commitment, to this, and Director Conklin have been a real, supporter of those efforts, particularly in this area. I share the county executive's goals for this particular area. I would point out that the second metro entrance, besides 355 BRT, is probably the most important transportation infrastructure to realize the potential of this area, which the county executive has cited as perhaps the most important economic development area in the county. The second metro entrance also, not only does it realize the full potential of White Flint 1 master plan, it creates the possibility for virtually all of White Flint 2, because it puts, those properties within an appropriate walkshed. The county executive has talked a lot about how 1 mile walksheds aren't real, that only half-mile walksheds are real. Well, if we believe that, then you need a second metro entrance, on this property. So, putting it off one more year, I think is acceptable, but it is a pattern. It's a troubling pattern. The county executive has previously zeroed this out under the auspices that WMATA was going to cover all of it, or the state was going to cover all of it. I'm glad that he's now moving towards this is going to be a partnership where we're going to try to figure out how to move forward as best as possible. But any scenario that doesn't include the county fully committed to the infrastructure as part of the envisioned master plan to realize the full potential is not acceptable. So, I just want to put that marker down. I hope that we can all agree to that, and appreciate the fact that this committee in particular, has been a significant champion of that issue.
Yes, we have. Councilmember Glass.
Yeah, so this is where the conversations are starting to get harder. right, as we foresaw at the beginning of this hearing. And this committee was very strong in supporting this project last year, the year before, and we delaying it 1 year, right? I think is simply just what we have to do given the numbers that we're working with. But I will share this, that if the county executive is working very hard to bring some exciting projects to White Flint, and from what has been happening at the Fed committee or what I've been hearing from other channels, things are afoot. And if the county executive believes that delaying this 1 year does not jeopardize those efforts, well, I'm gonna trust his judgment, and we will be the judge of that later on. I mean, quite frankly, it's all out there for everybody. So I'm fine with staff recommendation delaying this 1 year, recognizing that I and all of us here have been fully supportive of this project.
Great. I think that's without objection.
Okay. Next project is the Forest. Am I on? Yes. The next project is the Forest Glen Passageway. This is an underpass under Georgia Avenue.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
To the north.
Can you hold on, Dr. Orland? I think Mary
Sure.
had her hand up and I didn't see it.
Oh, okay. I actually had taken it back down, but I was just simply saying, I know that in the conversations with the governor, the county executive has been particularly focusing on transportation as a major investment point from the state, having a conversation saying that if the governor was willing to invest in Amazon, he should also be willing to invest. And it's been a positive conversation. So White Flint, more broadly, even on transportation, I think will be a focus.
I hope it results in specific commitments. Good.
Yeah.
Dr. Orland.
Okay, thank you. Forest Glen Passageway is an underpass under Georgia Avenue from the Forest Glen Station to the northeast corner of Georgia Avenue and Forest Glen Road. In the approved CIP, there's $18.5 million for it, with design would have started this fiscal year and completed in FY 25. Two things here. One is the executive is recommending delaying it for 2 years for fiscal reasons. And secondly, he points out, the DOT points out, that the cost estimate for the tunnel here is probably well below what it really will be. And they point to the fact that two other underpasses that the county has designed or had actually built. In the case of the one we just finished talking about a few minutes ago, the Capitol Crescent Trail Tunnel, where the design is done, the cost estimate per square foot for that tunnel is 2.5 times what was assumed for the Forest Glen Tunnel. And the one for the underpass at the medical center, where the project's almost done, is 4 times as expensive, $10,000 a square foot compared to $2,500. The $2,500 square foot estimate for the Forest Glen Tunnel was done several years ago. It was based on sort of a back of the envelope kind of planning effort. It wasn't any engineering done. And so I'm making 2 recommendations here about this project. First of all, because regarding the timing, because this is a high priority of the council, I think it's important for Vision Zero. We should build it as quickly as we can, but quickly as it can already means a 1-year delay, because DOT did not begin work on this in FY21. The earliest they can now start would be this summer. So it starts in FY22. So just by not starting it, the project is delayed at least a year. But I wouldn't delay it any more than that. But the other thing, which will have an impact on the CIP, is that the cost estimate for this project should be ramped well up. I'm using the lesser of those 2 examples I gave you, the Capitol Crescent Trail one, and inflating the cost estimate 2.5 times for the construction and the site improvements, utilities, and construction management work. So the cost would go from $18.5 million to over $40 million, $40.5 million, but built on a schedule which would start design this summer, FY22, and now be completed in FY26 rather than FY25. So that's my recommendation. And you see in the section of the packet, I've got a expenditure schedule showing the dollar amounts by cost estimate.
Colleagues? Going once. Councilmember Friedson.
if Councilmember Reamer wanted to go, I'll let him go as a committee member.
No, I mean, I guess I'm interested in the chair's view. These things are expensive. That's sort of what I said about Bethesda.
Yep.
Anyway, Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, well, the only thing that I support this project, and it's not in my district, but it does serve the eastern edge of my district. Capitol Heights, is right on the edge of it. I also, work quite a bit with Councilmember Reamer in the Fed committee on this master plan, and this is a key point. I will note that we're adding, if the committee approves this, we'll be adding $22 million, and so some of the unfortunate comments that were made in the prior discussion, that I think were somewhat hyperbolic about how, went from 20 to 50, it's going to go to 150. I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that, but projects cost money, and commitments that are made, cost money. And ultimately, if you make a commitment, you should understand how much it costs, and you should move forward with it, or we should walk away from it and be honest with people that we're walking away from it. But this idea that we, one project is astronomically expensive and the other project isn't, is just not accurate. These tunneling projects are critical, and they're also extremely expensive. If we take a position that we're not going to build bridges for transit, that we're not going to build tunnels for transit, that we're not going to build, we're not going to underground pedestrian and bike facilities to create the type of trail and transportation infrastructure that we want, that we're not going to fulfill our Vision Zero goals, then we should do that, and we should be honest with people about it. But I think it's really unfortunate when we only use the opportunity cost game when it's convenient, and we don't use it when it isn't. I think, unfortunately, project costs go up, and we have to deal with it. When it comes to a school, I've never been in a situation where the project cost of a school went up and we said, this now costs too much, we're not going to do it because we could do HVAC projects somewhere else. It's just not the way that we view that. Unfortunately, when it comes to transportation, we've now devolved into this conversation where we're pitting communities against each other, where we're pitting projects against each other, and I just don't think it's particularly helpful. And I hope that we will move forward with this project and certainly keep the commitments that were made on the Capitol Crescent Trail. But I just wanted to note the fact that the idea of project costs going up was raised at a previous item, and it's being addressed here too. And ultimately, we have to make a decision of what we support and what we prioritize and move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I understand your point. I think you're mixing apples and oranges, respectfully. This is a project, this is the entirety of a project that's been discussed for years. The previous one that you're referring to in my comments that you thought were hyperbolic, it is true projects cost a lot, and projects frequently, I can give you half a dozen examples of ones that have doubled in their cost. So I don't think it's hyperbolic at all. The fact is, we're talking about just not whether a project moves forward or not. We already have a tunnel. We're already getting a purple line. We're already are getting all kinds of enhancements to the Capitol Crescent Trail. The question is whether that one enhancement on that one item to an existing tunnel and project is worth that amount of money. That's the question. That's why this is different than this. This is an entirely new project.
If I could respond.
No, I don't want to go back and forth. It's not fair to the committee.
Okay.
If I could hop in here real quick, I'd like to level set and just understand exactly what we're talking about. Director Conklin, just to elaborate a little bit more on what's in the packet, that we have allocated $18 million for this project. What is the expected cost of this project?
The $18 million, as Glenn mentioned, was from a feasibility study done several years ago. When this project was added to the CIP, we highlighted that we thought that estimate was not reliable, and not enough engineering investigation had been done. The project was added, but that number is what was carried at that time, and I think council staff is doing the responsible and appropriate thing to use other like projects to get a better estimate. It's still not a engineered estimate. That would happen probably 1 year into our work on this. We would have a better sense of the true cost of the project. It could be higher or lower than what council staff has recommended now. But so this got added without that detailed step of work that normally occurs in these projects.
So we've appropriated $18 million for this project. You expect it to be higher. What do you expect it to be according to the packet?
I don't have the packet open.
It's 40 and a half million. Really, Mr. Conklin is right that obviously until the design is done, we won't have a reliable cost estimate. But given that we're using order of magnitude estimates now, it seemed appropriate to use an order of magnitude estimate that was based on the Capitol Crescent Trail experience as opposed to the feasibility study that was done many years ago.
So the level setting I'm trying to do here is we understand the need for these various projects, and we know that they are moving targets. But with respect to this one project, the amount that we've appropriated, the department and council staff think the actual cost might be double.
Well,
yes,
I wouldn't
think that's a fair way.
Yeah. All right.
A lamentable yes is what I'm hearing. Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much. I support the council recommendation.
I think that's without objection, Dr. Orland.
Okay, thank you. Franklin Avenue Sidewalk project basically is recommended for a delay of 1 year. Really, it's really a production delay. There's been some time lost with COVID, and it's going to take some time to actually acquire those slivers of right-of-way along Franklin Avenue to build the sidewalk. So it would be completed in FY23 rather than FY22, and I recommend concurring with the executive.
Colleagues, fine. All right, without objection.
Okay. Burtonsville Access Road. The purpose of the road primarily is to provide access to the properties on the north side of Route 198 in Burtonsville, so that when Maryland 198 itself is improved, which is likely to include a median, but also a lot of heavy construction work along that section between Old Columbia Pike and Old Route 29, the properties on the north side are going to need access to their property. So the Burtonsville Access Road, which parallels 198 to the north of it, will provide access to the backside of those businesses. The exec's recommending delaying it by 1 year. His point for fiscal reasons, but partly also because progress on the state's project is not going to go fast enough so that we need to actually have the project finished by FY 2026. I concur with the executive on this one. Delay it 1 year. I talked with the state highway staff about this, the project managers for the 198 project. They're doing a revisioning study there based on some money from the General Assembly, I think from Senator Zucker, which will be finished later this year. But they haven't even started doing preliminary engineering yet, or design work on this project yet. And so even the best case scenario where they would actually start design next summer or fall based on the new CTP, it wouldn't be finished until construction wouldn't be started until FY26. So the Burtonsville Access Road just has to be finished by then. I'm sorry, construction couldn't start before FY27. So as long as the access road is finished by FY26, which the 1 year delay would still do, that would be sufficient. So sorry for the jumbling, but that's why I'm recommending concurring with the executive on this one.
Did you get any feedback from the property owners around there, or the?
We haven't gotten any letters or public testimony on this project from the executive's recommendation. I don't know if you all individually have. All I see is what we get in the way of the council president's mail, and we haven't received anything.
I don't believe we've received anything at the department. Glenn accurately summarized the rationale for our recommendation here.
I'm sorry, you said Dr. Orland accurately summarized it?
Yes, it was a alignment of schedules between the state's program and ours, and knowing that these projects are closely related.
Is there a way we can accelerate the state work? What's our conversation with the state like on this?
Good question.
Tim, do you want to weigh in on that?
Sure. In fact, I'm meeting with the State Highway Administration, the project team this afternoon, and for it is a pre-NEPA corridor update. And so they're going to, I will learn more about their schedule at this time. I believe the legislative mandate that they're operating under has to be completed within a year time frame, and I believe they were $1 million. I don't know that that's enough to do everything that they need to do, but they are going to at least come up with potential solutions for the section of 198 that then could be advanced into design in the, assuming funding was allocated in the following fiscal year.
I don't know about you, but I feel like Eric Lukey is about to walk in that door right there. The district members there have been working really hard on this, and they want us to work with them. And it's a good project. I mean, it is something that will help that area transform. I can't really dispute the logic of trying to do it in timing. If money weren't an issue, then we would maybe proceed ahead of it. But could you maybe, Tim, send us a summary of that conversation with the state? I mean, if we can, I just think it would be helpful to provide a little more information about how this is a state-county partnership and how these two things go together.
Will do.
Right. I mean, I think that I would just say I think it sends the wrong message. We're in discussions with multiple property owners there now. We're in discussions with the state. We're seeking bond capacity there. We're talking about building a structured parking garage. This is consistent with, in a underserved area for many, many years. What the community's been asking for pedestrian safety on 198, where our own police haven't been enforcing the drag racing that happens there every weekend. I just think it sends the wrong, if we're behind, shame on us, but I think it sends the wrong message to the community to go along with this now. And it sort of undercuts some of the discussions we're having right now with both the state and the private property owners. Councilmember Glass.
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't know we had closed out the conversation on the Fenton Street Bikeway. Did we already?
We haven't gotten to it yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No worries.
I yield back.
You'll be first in the queue. You're early on it.
Fenton Street is the next item. We're not going to take that up until.
No, right. I mislooked. No, but I agree with your sentiments about 198. Absolutely.
Okay.
So we're restoring. Okay.
Wait, is that the plan?
Go ahead, Councilmember Reamer. Sorry.
Okay. The council staff's recommendation is to concur. Perhaps we should hold until after Tim has met with the state and get that information. We could return to this, in our next CIP. I imagine we're going to have another CIP conversation.
Yeah.
We'll make one. Well, I don't think we have one scheduled, but we will try.
We can have one in full council. We can have one in reconciliation later.
Yeah, we can certainly do it with full council. So do you want to not have a recommendation yet on this and just have this go to full council?
Okay, or
do you want to have a recommendation? Go.
Can you show me a map again, please?
198 properties, rear access.
Exactly, it's the rear access,
so
right?
It gets the cars off 198 where there's too many cars and too many pedestrians conflicting.
But what it makes possible is redevelopment along that.
Yes.
That road, right? I mean,
eventually, it's up to the developers, but it brings cars to the back too. So it energizes the back. You could have front-facing retail that way, and it gets where there's lots of pedestrians crossing 198. It gives cars a different way to access those private properties.
It sort of creates like a grid, not a grid.
Yeah,
it creates
exactly.
like an urbanized area for activity to happen.
There's a map on Circle 57.
Circle 57.
How sensible of you, Emil. Thank you.
Emil for the win. Let's see.
You didn't like my arm move?
I thought that wasn't bad. I got it.
You're the audience.
Circle 57 is not page 57. Let me see here.
Circle 57.
We're in parens 57 now. Yes. And
it's right. It's parens now as opposed to circles, but.
Okay, I see it.
And it's the red. It's the red part of that line, which is the project. The blue part is built by private developers.
Right.
What is
this? Doesn't. Yeah.
Has that been built or is that underway?
Blue part's done.
The blue part is done. The red part that is not done.
All right.
And
So it really is purely access to the back part of those properties.
and
Right,
then,
the properties are all where the words Old Columbia Pike are.
right. Those are the restaurants, right? That's
a
like
lot of them, right. And on the other side. So there's a lot of people that cross, and you know, a lot of community members that have asked for safer crossing there to slow the cars down on 198. There's a whole website set up to it. Build a Better Burtonsville's been dedicated to it. Fix198.com is all focused on this. It's to slow the cars down. And in service of that goal, giving cars a different way to access those properties by getting off 198
so.
makes sense.
To make sure I understand here, so the state part is rebuilding Old Columbia Pike. The county part is building the rear access road. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
And so the two don't have to go together, although there's a, I mean, anyway.
There's a synergy.
Well, the idea is that the red one should come first. The
Okay.
county should come first, so that when Old Columbia Pike is being reconstructed, the properties on the north side, where Mr. Hucker correctly said, where Old Columbia Pike reads, can get easy access. They don't lose access to
Have an
their
alternative.
customers.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we should not accept a cut here. I think we should proceed with what we have planned.
It wasn't a cut,
Not a
but not a delay.
Delay,
Not a
a
delay.
delay.
We should not delay this. Let's keep this on track if we possibly can.
Right.
So is that unanimous, no delay?
3-0.
Okay.
Thank you.
Observation Drive. This is the road that continues from Germantown up across Great Seneca Creek into Clarksburg. It's divided into two phases. The first phase goes up the Little Seneca Parkway and connects to Aurora Hills and Clarksburg Village in Clarksburg. And the second phase would extend from Little Seneca Parkway north to the town center. This project was won in the CIP a few years ago, and since then it's been delayed by 3 years. The executive is recommending delaying it another 3 years, so that construction wouldn't be finished on phase one until I think it's FY30. I think I said it was. In any event, yes, FY30 if it's delayed another 3 years. I'm recommending not delaying this. Again, the council want to have this on schedule for the reasons I say in the packet. I won't go through them given the nature of time. But again, that reconciliation, however, this may be a target for some delay, but maybe not as much as 3 years, just because it is such a large project. The Councilman Rice has written to you all. This was after the packet came out, basically supporting not delaying the project as I'm recommending.
Colleagues?
I agree. I mean, I think we should not delay this project. It's an important project. Certainly. Well, anyway, I continue to support this project. I think Clarksburg needs it, and I guess I will continue to point out the multiple projects that are part of building the Clarksburg, that people expect there there are multiple projects. There's a library, there's an aquatic center, there's other roads, there's M83. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on, and we certainly don't have funding for all that. And in fact, we canceled the tax that was intended to help pay for some of that infrastructure. So my point just is that this is an important one. We ought to fund it. It would be, I hope the community recognizes that this is a big one and we have very limited funds. And so if we approve this and keep it on track, this is a strong expression of support for Clarksburg. And it's a strong expression of understanding that transportation is a major issue there and that we want to make it better. And so that's personally why I support it. Thanks.
Councilmember Glass.
Yeah, I absolutely strongly support the project and have supported it over the last 2 years. And I just want to do some more level setting because while the council might have changed the tax structure for infrastructure, right, for the growth policy or SSP or whatever we've called it, I forgot. But the reality was that Clarksburg was the only area in the county that would have continued to pay a tax for its infrastructure. And I thought that was unfair, right? We're talking about all these other infrastructure projects. And so why should Clarksburg be the only one in this day and age to continue to be taxed for its infrastructure? And now that we look at all these projects in totality, and this is the only project on the list that is really up county. And so if we're going to continue being fair and treating Clarksburg with the respect that its residents deserve, we need to keep this project in.
Okay, I don't agree with a lot of what was just said. I mean, I think Clarksburg has been treated eminently fairly over the years, more than fair. But the main gripe in Clarksburg is M83. That's what people are mad about, and they are upset that the county council and the county government has backed away from M83. And I understand.
And the CCT.
Aggravation. Yeah, less so. I mean, let's be honest. I don't know that. I think people want solutions, but from everything I can deduce, the real anger is about M83. I wish that Observation Drive was, viewed as a really helpful improvement that would, meet some of that need. It strangely does not seem to be, even though I think it has very similar benefits. Albeit in a slightly different geography, but
interesting observation.
I don't know. Anyway, I'm just whining, I think, really, to be honest, at this point. But
Glenn smiled. He was the only one.
But I thought the tax. I think looking back on it, I think the additional tax was eminently fair. It was a deal that was struck, and then the county decided that it was not going to continue that tax. And I think many council members at the time said, well, it's going to weaken the case for all the infrastructure that you want. And, everybody wants to have their cake and eat it too. But
well, that seems to be this entire process here, right? All of these are very important, worthy projects until we have no money for them.
So anyway, I think we should try to keep this one on track.
I agree.
Looking forward to your tax bill. Okay. So I think that's without objection. Counts number 10, Dr. Orland, right?
Yes, Advanced Transportation Management System. This execs recommending a small reduction FY22, $300,000 due to fiscal capacity. They tend to absorb this by reducing or delaying the replacement of certain surveillance cameras. They think they can basically stretch that expenditure out over later years. I recommend concurring with that. Any comments on that? Hearing none. Silence is golden.
Wait, sorry. Just I just was taking a breath there.
Yeah.
Where are we?
Advanced Transportation Management System, a $300,000 reduction.
Reluctantly, I will, accept this. I do think this is a really important project. It doesn't sound like this has a significant impact, but
yes,
I think we ought to be doing more of this. So.
Right. Mr. Glass, Mr. Hucker?
Yeah, fine.
We're fine. Okay. Okay, the next two projects are actually not in the CIP at all, and they're not recommended by the executive, but I'm just putting them out there for you so that they could exist. Summit Avenue Extended in Kensington and Tuckerman Lane Sidewalk in Potomac. These are both projects that have now gone nearly finished with facility planning phase 2, which means they could be, they are eligible to be included in the CIP if you so chose. Summit Avenue Extended is the extends Summit Avenue on the west side of Connecticut Avenue, west side of Kensington, from Pliers Mill Road up to the intersection of University Boulevard and Connecticut Avenue, and would relieve the congestion at the intersections at Pliers Mill Road and Connecticut and Knowles Avenue in Connecticut. Includes bikeway and sidewalks as well. Its cost is $22.5 million. In 2/3 of that cost is actually right-of-way cost. Let me talk about Tuckerman now for a second before we get back to recommendations. Tuckerman Lane Sidewalk, you reviewed also actually the same meeting 2.5 years ago and recommended approval of what was called Alternative 3. There are 4 segments to the project, but because of the length and cost of this project, DOT has been concentrating on the westernmost 2 segments of this, which runs from Falls Road by Hoover Middle School and Churchill High School and continuing all the way over to just east of Seven Locks Road, and includes bikeways and sidewalks, improved from what they are now, according to the alternative that the T&E committee had recommended back 2.5 years ago. The cost of that project, if it were to be funded now, is about $15 million, and would take 6 years to build if you start in FY22. The Summit Avenue was 5 years. I'm bringing this to your attention because, again, they are eligible to be included in the CIP. However, I'm not recommending that you program them, but I would give you the opportunity to decide whether you want to do it or not. Obviously, you make the decision. I'm recommending not putting them in because typically new transportation projects, unless they're extremely urgent, don't show up for design in the first year of a CIP. It's usually more like the 3rd or 4th year of the CIP, and as time goes on, they move forward in time. If that's the case, in an off year for the CIP, the practice for the last quarter century is we don't add new projects in an off year of the CIP unless you need the money in the current year or the next year, in this case FY21 or 22. The point being that, well, if you think about adding the project, you don't really think we have to start work on it till FY23 or later, then that really ought to compete in the next CIP with all the other projects that DOT and other agencies might put forward at that point. So that's my recommendation. But again, what I would say is this: if either or both of these projects are ones you think are important enough to start design in FY22, then you should add them, or both of them. If not, then don't include them at all.
What is the implication of adding the design funds? I mean, do we have an affordable way to pay for these once we've designed them? I mean, what's the
well, we typically don't do that. Once you program design, that's really a commitment that you're going to build a project. And so if you program the design, which is like, construction drawings, getting permits, you don't do that unless you're going to follow up right away with right-of-way acquisition and construction. Otherwise, you're just wasting a lot of money. So the break point really for decision making is after facility planning is done, where you have a reasonably good cost estimate. And I think these are reasonably good cost estimates for these projects, and you have a very good idea as to what the scope of the projects are. But I would not recommend programming design, because that's sort of like a shadow expenditure beyond the design. You're going to want to then go forward and program right-of-way acquisition and construction. And if we're going to do that, we have a 6-year CIP that should be showing up in this amendment. So I'm recommending. I'm putting it out there again because you make the decision. It is eligible. I'm just doing due diligence here. I wouldn't recommend adding it this year. I think they could be considered next year when you have a full CIP.
That sounds reasonable. I'd like to hear what the district council member has to say.
Yeah, well, just briefly, I understand there's fiscal constraints here. I'm a supporter of these projects. I've been before this committee before talking about these projects. I do think that staff's and Dr. Orland's point that this is really not a traditional time when new projects for design funding get added in. And I do believe that once we make the commitment, we have to follow through on that commitment. So I will be back to fight for these projects in the next full CIP. I'll be in conversations with Mr. Conklin and the county executive to include them in the next full CIP. But I do think, given the other priorities, the fiscal constraints, and the tradition of how the off years of CIPs are handled, notwithstanding my support for these projects, I think they're very deserving and significant projects and very important to their local communities, including the Summit Avenue extended to the town of Kensington, which has long advocated for that to all of us. I don't think this is the appropriate time to do it. So thanks for asking.
Okay. Councilmember Glass. Are we all good with this?
Good. And I appreciate the district council members' rationale.
Yep. Terrific.
Okay, I'd like to go back to Observation Drive just for a second. It's a follow-up issue that I forgot to mention from the planning board. They're recommending that in phase 2, the northern piece of Observation Drive, that there be a facility planning study done to look at alternative alignments north of Little Seneca Parkway. My recommendation there is it's probably a good idea, but there's no pressing need to do it now because we're not going to get to stage phase 2 for at least another 6 years. So I think next year when we have the full CIP and we're taking up the facility planning transportation PDF, that could be considered as one of a study that could be funded as part of that. But I would defer that till next year. I just want to make sure I mention that because that was something that the planning board had mentioned. Okay, the next projects are Amherst Avenue Bikeway and Fenton Street Cycle Track. They're actually both programmed already in the CIP to a certain degree, although probably not as the cost probably will be higher for both. You reviewed Amherst Avenue last month. You're reviewing Fenton Street in a few minutes. WABA has recommended increasing the cost for both of them now, and I'm saying that's premature because once they finish the detailed planning for both of them, we will have a better cost estimate, which will be, we'll have it for next year, and next year would be the appropriate time to adjust the cost estimate for those two projects. So I'm disagreeing with WABA not to increase the costs for them now. Next year, different story. Any disagreement with that?
Okay. I mean, you're saying essentially that it doesn't matter as far as actually getting the projects done. Is that correct?
Eventually, my guess is we're probably going to have to increase the funding for both Amherst Avenue. That's already in the CIP for both Amherst Avenue and Fenton Street. But and we won't know what that cost is that we have to raise it to until next year.
Okay.
So why do it now?
Glenn, just a housekeeping issue. I don't object to your suggestion on this this matter, but are we backloading the CIP too much? I mean, it just seems like on every item, we're just saying, okay, let's do it in 24, 25, 26.
Fair point. In the executive branch, when they put together a CIP, all the departments present what they want. And of course, it adds up being too much. And so they do a reconciliation within the executive branch. It's all behind closed doors, sounds like a big secret thing, but it is a secret, actually. It's internal.
Yeah,
and
right.
Unfortunately, we have to do this all publicly. So the process we've always followed here is you say what you want to do within reason. And at the end, you realize that's too much. We're going to have to cut back some, hopefully a little bit here, a little bit there, but enough of those cuts so that it makes it fit into the box. We don't even know how big the box is going to be because, for example, you disagreed with the executive in terms of not reducing PAYGO in FY22, and when you reviewed spending affordability with Gene Smith early this month. And I don't know what you're going to do with the recordation tax. Last fall, you said you will probably take it up in the next month or so, bring it back and talk about it, and maybe approve some kind of an increase. We'll see. If you do that, that'll create more revenue. So until we get to the end, we don't know where we are. So start with what you want within reason, and we work back from there. Next project is master leases, transit radio system replacement. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. So I had a question about the Fenton Street Bikeway. Legislation has been introduced to create a business improvement district in downtown Silver Spring. And so I am curious if that comes to fruition, what the interplay with that and any powers that might come with the bid, what that would do with a bikeway and with regards to parking spaces or any of those things.
My understanding is I don't think there's any interrelationship with that because I think the bid is about promotion. It's not about capital projects. The better place to think about this is, are we going to have a Silver Spring ump like we have for White Oak, and which we hopefully will get soon from Bethesda? Because the idea there is that businesses as they develop are supposed to pay. The idea is pay towards the cost of some of these localized projects, of which these bikeways would be part of that. Same is true, and I made the same comment last month with regard to Amherst, is we could use a Wheaton UMP, urban mobility plan, to help pay for Amherst Avenue. It'd be a perfect project for that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Master leases project, the executive did send over an amendment on January 15th, but he's revisiting it. There's some changes he wants to make for it. So he probably will submit a revised version of it on March 15th, and it'll come back to the committee sometime in early April. There's some planning staff comments that they say that there is money that's collected from individual developers to mitigate for their projects. And they were recommending that there be a PDF to put all that money into one place. We actually put that money in the CIP in the form of contributions. It shows up as contribution lines on individual projects where the money goes, but we don't have an accounting as to what money has been collected and what could end up going to contributions. So rather than doing what the planning staff is recommending, which is to set a new PDF for this, I'm recommending we ask DOT and OMB, or Finance actually, to regularly provide to the council documentation of those contributions, what conditions there are on them, so we know how that money might end up being spent. Obviously, could either wait for the executive to recommend a specific set of improvements, or the council could do it, but until we know what it is, we don't know. We don't know what it is. And they made one other comment. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
We receive 2 to 3 of those per year right now.
Yes.
And it tends to be relatively straightforward how to deal with them, what they're related to. Your update of the growth and infrastructure policy contemplates a lot more of this activity. So what Glenn is suggesting about figuring out how to make this a more formalized process for handling these makes a great deal of sense, and we're starting to work on that now.
The other comment that the planning staff has to do with a specific development in Clarksburg, where they're recommending that the same kind of money be used in a certain way and for certain projects, particularly the 355 shared use path in the middle of Clarksburg. Rather than the council making decisions now, I think it's sort of complex issue, and I think I would leave it to the DOT and the executive to make a recommendation as to where that money should go. They could consider the planning staff's recommendation and make a recommendation ultimately to the council. It may be as part of the cycle, it may not, maybe later. And just the last 2 points, just real quick, there are amendments to the Flint Special Taxing District, but that's coming back to the T&E committee in a joint meeting with GO on March 16th, so they won't be taken up today. And separately, there are like 4 PDFs in the parking lot districts, amendments that are recommended for the parking lot districts. That'll be taken up when T&E takes up the parking district savings plan, hopefully in the next few weeks. We're still waiting for a revised savings plan from the executive branch. We think it's close. And Carlos Camacho and I have a meeting with OMB staff this afternoon on this. And hopefully, once that's transmitted, we'll schedule time with T&E, and you can address those amendments. And with that, completes my report on this item.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Orland.
So are we ready for, oh, sorry.
I think we are.
Okay, so we'll go to the next item, which is the Fenton Street Cycle Track project facility planning review. Very similar kind of review as what you did for Amherst Avenue last month. What we do is here is the purpose of this meeting for you all is to make a whatever recommendations you want to make to DOT as to how to carry forward the rest of the study. Is there a particularly is there a particular alternative that you would recommend that they carry into phase 2? It's guidance you're providing. You're not making the ultimate decision. So first I want to turn it over to DOT, to Chris or anyone else to give opening comments. Matt Johnson, who's the project manager, has the PowerPoint to go through. He will talk about the project in detail. Then Eli Glazier and Dave Onsbach are here from the planning board staff. They reviewed it. Their packet is in the report, as well as the planning board's letter with their recommendation. I'll talk about that very briefly. Then I'll make my comments and then turn it over to you all for further discussion and a decision as to what you want to recommend. So if that's okay, Mr. Chairman, I turn it over to DOT at this point.
Sure. I think you all know Matt Johnson, who's the project manager for this, and is one of the most talented and passionate planners and engineers we have working on bike facilities. This project has had a number of challenges related to estimates of traffic, related to the amount of on-street parking and loading demand, concerns of businesses, and a whole host of things to work through. I know Councilmember Reamer has had correspondence with us in the past about whether we were advancing this on the right pace or not. I'm really happy with the way this work has progressed and the way that our team has managed to talk with all of the interests in this and keep the temperature at a reasonable level as issues that are really important to different groups come to the fore, and has come up with a set of good alternatives and recommendations for the committee to consider. That I'll hand it over to Matt to walk you through the work that's been done.
If I can interrupt for a second, I just remind everybody we have a hard close at 12:30, so we have another hour or so if it needs to go that long.
We might have some closes before that.
Right.
I'm going to be gone by noon, Glenn and Matt. So.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chris, for the introduction, and thank you to the council for the opportunity to present on this subject. I'm sharing my screen now, so you should see that momentarily. And I will try and keep the PowerPoint moving so we can have time for discussion. Again, Matt Johnson with DOT to talk about the Fenton Street Bikeway study. Just a quick overview of the scope of the project. You can see it on the map here in orange, but the project limits starting Cameron Street in the north, and they follow Fenton Street down to Gist Avenue in the south. There are 7 preliminary alternatives that were developed as part of the study that was just completed. And I just want to point out there are some related projects in the corridor. At the north end in purple and red, you can see the pieces that we built through the old planning department site and the Cameron to Planning Place Bikeway in red. The Cameron to Planning Place Bikeway, we anticipate to start construction this spring. And then at the south end of the project, we have the Maryland 410 Fenton Street intersection reconstruction. That project we expect to go to construction in next year in 2022. And then, of course, the green line is the Metropolitan Branch Trail, which will connect downtown Silver Spring to Union Station in Washington, D.C. And the Fenton Street project will essentially operate as a spur of that project. So it sort of connects to all the way to downtown Washington once DOT builds their piece. We did complete the study in November. This is available on our website for anyone who's watching at home who wants to download the study or review the alternatives. We collected traffic volume data just in terms of in the numbers. We collected the initial data back in 2017. We refreshed those numbers in early 2020 before the pandemic happened. On average, there's about 10,000 vehicles per day using the Fenton Street corridor. We have bike volumes of around 4 to 5 per hour, not per day, but per hour. It does vary a little bit throughout the day and depending on which part of the corridor you're in. But there are people biking today on Fenton Street. We expect those numbers to go up with a low stress bikeway. We collected 3 years worth of crash data, all of 2017, 2018, and 2019. Luckily, during that period, there were no fatalities. And only a quarter of the crashes resulted in injuries. But you can see that bikes and pedestrians are represented, totaling about 13% of the crashes in the corridor. In terms of parking, we know that parking is a major issue for the corridor. We did an analysis of a variety of things. I'm just giving you a really high-level view of these things, but essentially, there are 91 on-street parking spaces today on Fenton Street itself. There are 207 on-street parking spaces within 1 block of Fenton Street on either side on the east-west streets. And within 1 block of Fenton Street, in public lots and garages, there are 4,741 additional parking spaces.
Okay, wait, can we just pause there for a second? I know we need to move quickly, but these are really critical points. A lot is made about parking on Fenton Street. There are, I mean, that is like 1% of the parking spaces that are within a block of Fenton is the spaces that are actually on Fenton. I mean, what is that percentage-wise here? What are we, I've never seen this number before. This is very dramatic. There are.
Well, and if Matt, you could explain too, how many of those spaces within a block have restrictions on them?
Some of the spaces on the east-west streets east of Fenton Street are restricted to permit parking during the day. I don't think any of them are.
North-south ones like Grove?
Well, Grove is not shown. The numbers are not shown for Grove. They're only shown on the east-west streets within 1 block of Fenton. So we don't have any north-south streets other than Fenton represented in these numbers.
Right.
So
Okay.
there are parking meters on Georgia Avenue, for example. Those are not included in this count. We only include the streets that are within 1 block of Fenton.
Right. Not available all day, but yes.
But my takeaway here is more than 4,700 parking spaces within a block of Fenton. So parking access to Fenton does not seem to be significantly affected by the fate of 91 spaces on Fenton, one way or the other. And yet that has been a major, major concern. I understand the concern because it's very visible and it's, before you at all times, right in front of you, there's the parking spaces on the street. However, we have to understand the full context. That's all. Okay.
We do. Matt, can I just ask, you know how it is, Hans. People like to park where they're used to parking and not.
Yeah, understood.
No, people, it's change management. So, Matt, does the 4741, I presume that includes the garage on Sligo that is either, well, it hasn't been open to the public for a lot of the time, or some of it's been restricted. Chris is here too. Anyway, is that included? And because that garage isn't going to be here forever either, right?
Yeah, that's garage 4, and you're seeing this blue circle here with 295 spaces in it. That's the available capacity in that garage right now. There are more spaces in that garage, but the garage is not fully open.
Right.
But yes, it does reflect those numbers.
Thanks.
It includes all the spaces. So some fraction of those are not presently usable of the 4,741.
No. This 295, I believe, is the existing open capacity. I believe there are additional spaces in that garage that are closed that are not in this number.
So there's actually more spaces potentially, although we presume that when it is redeveloped, the number of parking spaces will be retained, but we don't know because that hasn't happened.
Oh, it was restricted for safety reasons, so I'm not sure it'll reopen at full capacity. Glenn's waving his hand. Glenn? He's not waving his hand. He is waving it to dismiss me. Okay, Matt, back to you.
All right, I'm going to just try and move through things. We know that loading is a critical issue in this corridor. We know that a one-size-fits-all approach is not going to work in this corridor. So we have been going door to door, talking to businesses over the past year. We've talked to over 40 businesses in the corridor, some of them on multiple occasions, and to try and learn what their needs are. And delivery needs in the corridor range from everything from large semi-trailers like the one you see in the top picture down to box trucks like the one you see in the bottom picture, and even cars and vans. A lot of these businesses don't have alley access or have their own parking, so some of them, they only have entrance through their only access is through the front door of the building. So we know that loading is a critical need. We're going to continue to work with these business owners as we go through the design process, and we're going to try and tailor those loading zones to each individual business owner's needs to prepare for the current situation, but also to try and future-proof the project as well. We do, of course, have transit on the corridor. There are 4 ride-on bus lines and 1 Metro bus line that traverse the corridor. We also have bus lines that cross over the corridor, and there will be a Purple Line station directly adjacent to Fenton Street when it opens at Silver Spring Library. So I just want to quickly run through the alternatives. And this slide just kind of talks about what we looked at and trying to balance. So all of these things are incorporated in the basic elements of design, but a safe continuous bikeway was the primary goal of the project. We want to, of course, minimize the impacts to parking, minimize economic impacts to businesses, both during construction and once it's completed. We want to maximize vehicular and pedestrian travel, improve accessibility for people who have disabilities to the maximum extent practical, minimize impacts to street trees, accommodate transit loading and access, try and implement stormwater management best practices where possible, and of course minimize utility impacts, right-of-way acquisition, and costs otherwise. Before I get into what separates the different alternatives, I want to talk about what's common to all of them. All of the alternatives have at least 1 travel lane in each direction on Fenton Street. So we're not closing Fenton Street, we're not making it one way, that's for vehicles. All of the alternatives have some level of on-street parking. It does vary from alternative to alternative, but there is always on-street parking. There are always on-street loading areas on each block, although the exact configuration will be something that we'll work out through the design process, but there will be on-street loading zones on each block. All of them have 5-foot or wider sidewalks. All of them have a two-way bikeway on the west side of the street. That's the same side of the street as the Silver Spring Library. There's always a raised bikeway barrier like the one you see in the top picture, some kind of concrete barrier. There will be some number of floating bus stops. The exact design of them is something that we're going to work out. And there will be corner island treatments like the one you see in the bottom picture there, which is the protected intersection at Spring Street and 2nd Avenue in downtown Silver Spring. The ones on Fenton won't look exactly like this. We've made some design refinements based on lessons learned from this project, but the idea will be to slow down those turning vehicles. I'm just kind of summarize here that there's 7 alternatives. 2 of the alternatives don't generally widen the street other than at intersections. 3 of the alternatives generally widen the street for the entire length of the corridor by 2 feet to make room for more things. And 2 of the alternatives try and hybrid. We try and minimize widening as much as possible, but there's still generally some widening throughout much of the corridor. And just to disclaimer that these are very conceptual at this point. A lot can change through the design process based on the feedback we get today from other community meetings going forward, and based on what we learn from like where utilities are and things of that nature. I'm going to show one page of the alternatives for each of the alternatives, and this slide is just to orient you we're always going to be looking at the same intersection for each of the alternatives. And this is the intersection of Fenton Street and Silver Spring Avenue. In all the graphics, you're going to see Fenton Street is running left to right, and the east-west street is running up and down on your screen. In this case, Montgomery College will be off the screen to the left, downtown Silver Spring is off the screen to the right, Georgia Avenue is parallel to the top of the screen, and Grove Street is parallel to the bottom of the screen. You can see Cafe Lasac here on the upper right corner, which would be the northwest corner, Italian Kitchen, in the bottom right corner, which would be the northeast corner, just for reference. So this is alternative A that we're showing here. This alternative, the goal was to prioritize on-street parking, and that generally means at the expense of turn lanes. So in alternative A, there are no left turn lanes anywhere in the corridor other than at Fenton Street northbound at Colesville Road. Otherwise, we just have a single lane in each direction with parking on both sides of the street. This does require us to widen the street on the east side by 2 feet. So you can see we're moving the curb on the south side here. We do see things like loading zones shown here in this pink color. This is a floating bus stop example. You can see corner island treatments. You're going to see many of these features in all the alternatives. I'm just pointing them out since this is the first one you're looking at. Because we don't have left turn lanes, we cannot protect left turns across the bikeway. Alternative B also has widening. In this case, we're trying to prioritize movement of vehicles. So there are left turn lanes both in the northbound and southbound directions. Because we have left turn lanes, we have to stop the parking a little bit further away from the intersection. So it does have a more of an impact to parking, but there still is parking on both sides of the street. Alternative C also has widening. This one, the only difference between B and C is there's no southbound left turn lane. You can still turn left, there's just not a left turn lane. Left turns southbound are much less common than northbound left turns because they're going away from the business district. But because we don't have the left turn lane here, we can keep parking a little bit closer to the intersection. So it saves a little bit of parking relative to B. Now the next 2 alternatives we're going to look at, D and E, do not have any widening. They generally keep the curb in the same location it is today, other than at the intersections where we do have to remove the bump outs, and there may be some limited widening to make room for the corner islands. Because we're not widening, we don't have room for 2 lanes of parking. So in this case, there would only be parking on one side of the street. We're showing it here on the east side of the street. Alternative D tries to prioritize parking within that framework, which means there's still no left turn lanes, just like in alternative A. But because the street's narrower, there's only room for one row of parking. So D does not save a lot of parking relative to the widening alternatives, but it does save more parking than alternative E, which I'm showing now, which does have left turn lanes. So we are trying to, in this case, move vehicles within that framework of not widening the street. E is very similar to C, other than the fact that it doesn't have parking on the west side of the street. F and G are hybrid alternatives. They try and combine them. They're largely based on alternative C, except that they try and limit widening. So, for example, on this graphic, you can see there's no widening on this block to the south of Silver Spring Avenue, but there is widening on the block to the north of Silver Spring Avenue. The only thing that separates alternatives F and G is 2 intersections. So with alternative F, the idea was to prioritize parking where it's most critical, which is the block between Silver Spring Avenue and Thayer, which has a lot of small businesses. And so in that alternative, We don't have a left turn lane northbound at Thayer, and we ban left turns altogether at Thayer. So you can still turn left at Silver Spring Avenue. Your next ability to turn left will be Wayne Avenue because Bonifant Street will be one-way eastbound as part of the Purple Line project. So with F, we allow you to turn left at Silver Spring Avenue, but not at Thayer to allow us to have more parking on the block between Silver Spring and Thayer. G, you can turn, it's off the screen, but you can turn left at Thayer. But in this case, we would ban left turns at Silver Spring Avenue, which would allow us to maintain some additional parking in this block to the south of Silver Spring Avenue. So you can see in this particular graphic, you can see there's no parking on the west side, south of Silver Spring Avenue, but there is parking on both sides of the street, north of Silver Spring Avenue. So that's a really quick overview of the alternatives. To just kind of recap on what the impacts are, this graphic shows you that alternatives A and D do not allow us to protect left turns across the bikeway, which means we consider them less safe for cyclists. The other alternatives, we do have left turn lanes, so we can protect those left turns. We consider them safer. In terms of traffic impacts, right now the average travel speed, if you were to travel for all the way from Gist Avenue to Cameron Street in the peak direction at rush hour, on average, this is before the pandemic, it would take you 4 minutes and 6 seconds to traverse the entire corridor. And you can see the travel time in the center column shows the new travel time with each of these alternatives, and the differences here in the rightmost column. Alternatives A and D, those are the ones that don't have left turn lanes. Those increase the travel time by 3 minutes and 24 seconds, which is almost doubling the travel time. The other alternatives are relatively close. They're only about 20 seconds difference. Alternative G performs the best, 36 seconds additional travel time. That represents about a 14% increase if you were to go all the way the entire length of the corridor at rush hour. The others are 42 seconds to 54 seconds on average. In terms of parking impacts, right now there are 91 on-street parking spaces. Alternative A potentially gives us the opportunity to maybe even add a few spaces. The other alternatives do lose parking. Alternatives B and E lose the most parking, around half the parking. And the others are a little bit closer. You can see here that C has a loss of 26 spaces, D has a loss of 30 spaces, G has a loss of 35 spaces, and F has a loss of 37 spaces. Now, in terms of costs, I just want to caution you that our costs are very conceptual right now, but this slide shows you what you would expect. The alternatives D and E that don't have very much widening are the cheapest. The alternatives that do have widening, A, B, and C, are the most expensive. And the alternatives that are in between, the hybrid alternatives, are moderately, they're in between. The cost, I'm going to show you the numbers next, but I don't want you to get sticker shock. There's a 40% contingency added to these numbers because we're at this stage of design. We've also asked our consultants to be very conservative, meaning we're going to assume the worst case scenario. We're going to have to acquire right of way. We're going to have to move utilities.
Matt, how many more slides do you have?
Not too many.
Well, I don't know what that means. We're going to close in 15 minutes. Okay. Right. So we want time for discussion of this. Sure,
I understand. So these costs, I just want to point out that we know that these are overestimates. We don't expect it to be this expensive. What I would encourage you to look at is not the total number, but look at the difference between the alternatives. We know that they're all overestimates, but we think they're probably all overestimates in a similar direction. So don't look at the total cost, look at the difference between the costs. I think the planning board report did a very good job. The planning staff report did a very good job of looking at those. We can skip over this to save time, but basically we almost all the comments we got were supportive, and most of the comments were supportive of alternative E. And so with that, I'll let you have a discussion, and if we have any questions or anything I didn't cover, we can get into that.
Thanks. Awesome. That reflects a lot of work. I appreciate it. Glenn.
Mr. Hucker, do you want to hear from planning staff briefly with the planning board's recommendation? Eli?
I kind of want to make sure we can get to the council members, but
sure.
Be really brief. Sure.
Yeah, thank you. I can be very quick. This is Eli Glacier for the Montgomery Planning Department. The planning board, it supported 5-0 advancing alternative E as the preferred alternative. They also supported potentially removing additional on-street parking if it would make the project better, and also stated that along future bikeway projects, on-street parking preservation should really be the lowest priority when thinking about making sort of a low-stress bicycle environment. And then planning staff had identified the intersection of Fenton Street and Wayne Avenue with the Purple Line and the pedestrian environment and this bikeway coming in as a really a really important intersection to get right in terms of separating motor vehicles from light rail vehicles, from bicyclists from pedestrians. So they had just asked that DOT coordinate with Montgomery planning staff in the future to further design that intersection. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have about our recommendations or whatever you'd like to do.
Great, thank you, Ian.
And could I just give my comments for like 60 seconds?
Sure.
And then I'll be done. I'm recommending alternative E, but with some aspects of G. E takes the most parking away from the street by far. And the on-street parking, to the degree it's being taken, particularly in Fenton Street, is pretty significant. Even more significant, though, is the taking away the loading zones. Because a lot of these properties, a lot of these businesses, they only get their materials, their supplies through the front door. So they have to have a place to have that. So I'm recommending E, but with maybe some cutouts and periodically for where there could be loading zones, and it could also be used as parking, short-term parking. And I agree with the planning board and planning staff's recommendation. The planning board made this comment, and Eli just made it, about on-street bikeway should always take precedence over everything else. I disagree with that. I think business retention is at least as important as providing a bikeway there. In this case, I think we can accommodate both, but there may be opportunities elsewhere that's not the case. And just finally, I'll just note that in the packet I mentioned, there's 3 other links of the Fenton Avenue Bikeway, which are not part of this particular project, which are already well underway, and which will essentially extend the bikeway all the way from King Street, south of 410, all the way up to Spring Street. And with that, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say I think this is an exciting project. I think when we have all of the downtown Silver Spring network built, it'll work together in a really powerful way, and it's going to help it's going to help really enhance this urban area and make Silver Spring what I've always dreamed it could be, really a demonstration of very progressive thinking and progressive infrastructure in a way that not only helps us compete and attract new residents and create a really dynamic business environment, but also supports our local small businesses. And I think ultimately what we're trying to do here is bring a lot more people into downtown Silver Spring. That's what we're trying to achieve. And I think we will achieve that as we improve the infrastructure there. And people just are happier and more comfortable there, and there's more things to do. I think all of this, the change can be a bit, concerning, but I think over the real vision here is a thriving, bustling downtown Silver Spring. Secondly, it was helpful to hear, Matt's explanation of the cost estimates, that this is sort of built in as, I don't know if I'll go so far as to say this is the worst case scenario, but it sounds like it's not too far. So, my understanding is that the actual experience in downtown Bethesda, building the bike loop there, has been far less per mile than what is anticipated here. And, Bethesda normally is a pretty expensive place to do, street work. So I would like to, be optimistic here that we're not really heading towards the $10 or $11 million item. On the parking, I want to be really careful here. I understand, like, my next door neighbor for years was the Asfa family. Masu Asfa owns Masu, the salon that's right there, right at the corner of Silver Spring Avenue, or a door or two up. And I can imagine that, there are apprehensions about the street parking issue. I think what is important is the expectation of the customer. If the customer has a really high expectation that they're going to be able to get a street parking space, and then when they go there, they can't, then they might change their behavior and go to a different place. I do not think that people who are coming into this Fenton Village area have a high expectation that they're going to get a street parking space. And I think it bears itself out in the numbers that such a tiny fraction of available spaces are actually on the street. If you're going and you need to get a parking space, you just know that the odds of getting one on the street are really low, and you're probably going to end up in one of the lots. And then that's what that's your expectation. And your expectation is then most of the time met. I rarely get a spot on the street when I'm going there. I almost always just head to the lot. And so I don't think it's going to have an impact to reduce the number of on-street spaces, just because they provide such a negligible share of the spaces that are available. If this was different, if these street spaces were a large share of all parking spaces that were available, then I think it would have a huge impact, and I think we would really want to think differently about it. But I don't think that's the case here. So I think the benefit of this will be a real increase over time in the number of people who come into downtown Silver Spring, the more customers for the small businesses, and just a more thriving district. I support option E. I would go with the planning board version of this. A little unclear on what Glenn's more, finely grained recommendations might be. If we want to discuss that, I don't know if we'll have time to really get into it. I'm taking up a lot of what time we have. I'm sorry. I generally think option E, I would need more time to be convinced of Glenn's additional refinements to option E before I would be comfortable going with that. So I recommend that we go with the planning board's option E, and I will take a closer look at Glenn's ideas and give that further consideration.
Okay, Councilmember Glass, do you have any?
I first want to thank Councilmember Raymer, who's been leading this charge for a very long time. So to see these incremental steps and updates, I sense your excitement. I saw it on your face as we were going through the presentation, and extend my appreciation. I support the planning board's, the planning department's recommendation, and also just want to say that it was a pleasant to hear Mr. Johnson state that these were overestimates. Right? During the last 2 hours, we've had conversations about not having enough money to do what we want. But if you are pretty confident that the estimates that you've put forth are over estimates, that is wonderful, and it's a great way to end this T&E session. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Raymer, thanks for all your time on this. It's fine to take a lot of time for your comments. You didn't take much. And thanks to Matt and Eli and everybody who's put in a lot of time on this as well. I've heard from a lot of constituents about this. I think I'm for E as well, with the changes that I don't disagree with the comments about parking spaces. I think there's lots of different types of users. There's some that aren't really very able to. I think the demand on parking varies greatly. As somebody who uses this area a whole lot, demand on parking varies greatly by the time of day. There are a lot of people who are able-bodied and happy to park in a garage and walk 5 or 6 blocks, and there's a lot of people who aren't really able to do that, and we should keep them in mind as well. And I think they are more likely to be seniors and more likely to schedule their trips at a time when there's less demand on the street parking. I think we need to really separate in our heads the loading zones from the parking spaces, because I'm very sensitive to the needs of the businesses that only have the front access that's been mentioned. And I appreciate what Matt said about working with them block by block to make sure loading zones are protected. Because if they lose their loading zone, we're going to lose the business. And agree with what Glenn said about retaining the existing businesses is very, very important. It's like the purple line. We all want to get to the end goal and the economic development and the vibrant urban center that it's going to catalyze, but we don't want to kill all the businesses that are inconvenienced by the construction while we get there. And this corridor has been, greatly burdened by a lot of utility construction that's going on right now and has been for years, by the Thayer Spring site, and many other individual projects, as well as the Purple Line construction. So, I really want everybody to be able to keep that in mind as well, because a lot of these businesses have been hanging on. We've lost an awful lot, and many others are just hanging on by a thread. So I'm for E as long as we're serious about a focus on retaining loading zones, in particular, paying attention to the number of parking spots, and working with the State Highway Administration and MTA, and to identify some means to better separate pedestrians and bicyclists and motor vehicles and the light rail. to maintain everybody's safety there. Sorry, I got to go. Gabe and I are meeting with.
Can I just summarize there? Because I believe Councilmember Glass and I supported the planning board recommendation. It sounds like you were more with council staff. I will take a closer look at council staff's recommendations in the coming days. And, you know, I can follow up separately as to whether I would adjust, you know, my position to the council staff position or retain the planning board's position.
That sounds totally reasonable. Yeah, and I wish I had had more time to look at this and meet with some folks individually, but I really appreciate the work that's gone in and the progress. Okay, cool. Thank you all. Great session.
Great work. Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.